Hello, everyone. It's good to be back with you once again. Today, I have another very distinguished person, Gurushri Swamy. She's an economist who worked for the World Bank. After she retired from the World Bank, she became a professor in the United States for a number of years. Most recently, Gurushri and I have been working together as mentors for an NGO called FEA. FEA works with low-income, motivated, hardworking young people, 17 to 25 years old in India. We try to boost their self-confidence. And Gurushri has really helped the women in that effort because most of the batches that we deal with have maybe 50% or a little bit less women in there. And a man like me cannot really be a role model for them. So it's always very helpful to have Gurushri with us. Before I turn it over to Gurushri, I want to say that towards the end, she will tell us a little bit about what it was like for her to work at the World Bank. So now, Gurushri, over to you.
Thank you, Subodh, and hello, everybody. I really appreciate this chance to talk about some of the most most recent developments, I would say, between China and India. By we, I mean Indians. I still feel Indian, even though I've lived in this country for a very long time. Indians have been trying to catch up with China for ever and ever. I don't know if you remember, Subodh, they were always, when we were in graduate school, there were always these papers being written about, will it take us 10 years or 15 years? But in fact, I just looked up some data and we have not caught up because per capita income of China is $19,000 and India's is $7,100. That is the gap. And all this fuzz about India being the fastest growing country is just that. It's just bragging on very little basis. India, as you can see, is the fastest growing country, but it has a lot to catch up with China and the rest of the world. The only thing we have actually caught up on is population. Strangely enough, and or unfortunately enough. Last week, the world made an announcement about, there was a big hullabaloo about how India has become as big as China, reached the same population of 1.4 billion. And there was a lot of excitement one began to wonder, is this really something to be very thrilled about, or is it something we need to be worried about? On the whole, I feel we need to be, if not worried, we need to get ready for the changes that have come about because of this. Because you see, China's population policies were very different from India. And so we've both reached the same number, but in very different ways. China had this one-child policy. It started in 79, and China made it compulsory for people to have no more than one child. This measure was also they had forced abortions, forced sterilizations, and really quite a horrid policy that I don't think India's democratic principles would ever have allowed.
Right.
But as a result, this one-child policy, and it was enforced very strictly. And so the fertility rate dropped very fast. It was over 7 children per woman in 1960, and it came down to only 2 in 1990. And then by now, the fertility rate is even below 2, which means that there is not many couples are having children at all, not even one. Although China has eased up its policies. Therefore, China's population is actually declining. In India, the population measures were more in the nature of persuasion, incentives, propaganda, हम दो क्या है वो हम दो हमारे दो
हम दो हमारे दो, right?
हमारे दो,
right.
And except during the emergency when under Sanjay Gandhi, there were these sterilization camps. And then that was stopped. Other than that, India's policies have been somewhat lax, actually, at least in the beginning. It picked up later. But they have never been coercive like in China. So we should remember that when we think about how China has magnificently reduced its population growth rate. I don't think it is something that I could possibly live with. But the effect was that the fertility rate just fell much more slowly. And India's fertility rate is now about 2, which means that it's a slightly above 2, which means it's still growing, unlike China's population, which is declining. And the other more important thing is that in China, the increase, there's a huge increase in the number of elderly people. They have to be cared for. And how China will do it is something we will all watch, because their working age population is not growing much at all.
Right.
But in India, it's quite the opposite. The population that's growing, that's already large, is the youth, people of working age, young people. We already have about 500 million of them, and between 12 and 20 million will be added every year. And the real challenge for India is to find good, well-paying jobs for all these people. And in that case, we have fallen behind. We have fallen behind very badly. India has missed opportunities. China didn't get to $19,000 per capita income just by reducing its population growth. It also took advantage of a number of opportunities in the world, like manufacturing exports. That is what made the income go up at least as much as the reduction in the child population.
Yeah, and I think it's a very important point, Gurushri, to keep in mind. People think China is successful because they control their population.
Right.
But that's not the main reason for the growth. The growth comes from other policies, right?
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yeah. It helps, though, to have a slower growing population.
Okay.
But yeah, it took great advantage of the labor-intensive manufacturing. Millions of people, even women, single women, left their small towns or villages and went to the coastal cities where these big factories making garments, shoes, toys, and all sorts of things. In fact, but India never did. In fact, I know of at least one person who came to manufacture garments in the city where I come from, which is Bangalore. And after trying very hard for 3-4 years, he closed shop and left, because the Indian bureaucracy and the labor laws were so strict that he said, I can't manage anymore. China, on the other hand, had these export processing zones or something called like that. And so they were able to employ the millions of young people who existed despite their one-child policy. I mean, they didn't wipe out the population altogether.
Right.
And so India's youth lacks such opportunities. To me, it became fairly obvious because I sat in on many of the FEA sessions with.
Okay, Gurushri, just to tell the viewers, we are now shifting gears a little bit, talking in policy in general to our specific experience working with the young people in the FEA groups that Gurushri and I work with, just to tell the people that we are shifting gears a bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But I do this because it is so, for me, sitting here in the United States, the FEA was a great opportunity to actually see how these young people are managing or not managing, what the problems are. And it became very clear to me that one of the problems is, the major problem is lack of jobs. There were many of them were in high school, in the latter years of high school, and some were in college, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. And they all come from modest backgrounds. I mean, if you come from a rich or medium rich family in India, you can certainly get rather good education. But these people that I saw in these FEA groups, they're deliberately selected to be of modest background. And they had high ambitions. They wanted to be IAS, members, doctors, engineers, teachers, military, police, lawyers. But it occurred to me that not one in all the sessions said, we want to go get a good job at a good factory. Because it just shows you that it's not something that is available very easily. India must therefore really provide opportunities for good training, vocational training, and skill development, so that they become eligible for factory employment. That seems to me to be the major, would be the major source of employment. And India must also allow for the growth of such industries. Now, another thing I saw in these sessions is that girls have additional problems. It's not just lack of opportunity, but other things as well. Many of the girls, even in big cities, said that they faced strong family pressures to get married instead of continuing the education and getting a job. And they felt that they wanted to continue, but there was this pressure. And nobody in the community, I don't know, in some their teachers, or there was nobody in the community to support them and say, no, let this girl do what she wants. I felt very sad to hear that. They were wanting to finish their education, do some more training, and get into jobs. But it was difficult. There was a big pressure to get married, have children, the traditional role.
Yeah, and that's why I
Now,
asked you to join us, because they won't say those
yeah.
things if only I was present. They won't say that. They would
Yeah.
talk about these issues and what kind of advice they need to somebody who looks like their grandfather.
But grandmother is all right.
Grandmother is all right, but grandfather, no. So grandfather is the resistance to them. So they wouldn't say these things to me. And I wanted them to say these things. And that's why it is always so good to have you with me in those sessions, because they do
Thank
open
you.
up. They
Thank
do
you.
open up, and they do talk to you, and they do respect you, and they love to have you there. Okay, so let's continue.
But yeah, in fact, I don't know how to put this, but the fact is that there has been research showing that even if girls don't get very high education or don't go into jobs, they still make better mothers than uneducated. So that's something to keep in mind. They bring up their children better, their children are healthier, they're educated, and so on. Overall development. And I also pointed out to them that, at least in urban areas, if a girl has a good paying job, she's actually more valuable, even in the marriage market. This is
Okay.
what I saw.
Right.
Oh, she has got a job. I mean, that is very good. Where does she work? How much does she earn? So I think at least in the urban areas, it's becoming more and more important for women to not only be educated but have a job. So I don't know how these girls will overcome this pressure, but they need to use these arguments to convince their parents, find somebody in the community to support them. And I think it's happening, but actually female labor force participation, that is how many women, young women going to work, is not very high, which shows that they are not able to do what they want to do. I have no solutions, but I thought this is something you should know.
Yeah, good.
Your readers might know, huh?
Thank you. Thank you, Gurushri. It's a very important.
Yeah.
Point. Right.
Yeah. And finally, I just want to go back. This is as I looked at the data, this is something I saw that, in China, in India, and in many parts of East Asia and perhaps elsewhere, there is a very strong preference for male babies.
Yes.
And there's a strong preference for boys. And in this situation, population policies can have a very unfortunate impact on girls' welfare. Let me give you just a couple of when you put restrictions on family size, it leads to, that means that if you can only have one child in China, they wanted that child to be a boy. Even in India, where there was, it was not such strict thing, you could have 3 children if they couldn't do anything. But even there, once they started having this propaganda about 2 children being enough, already we began to see the preference for boys. And in China, this policy was announced in 1979, and the sex ratio at birth, that is the number of boys born over girls, rose up from 108.5, that is 8 boys more than per girl in 1982, which was already pretty high, to 118 in 2010. That means for every girl child, there were 18 boys born. And how do you think this happened? Because of induced abortions or infanticide, which means that the girl child, was starved or done away with in some other way, in ways. The ratio has come down, but it is still one of the highest ratios in the world. Now, in India, abortion was legalized in 1971. And in 1982, ultrasound became available for everybody. In fact, I remember hearing of buses equipped with such screening devices roaming all over. I think it was mainly Punjab and Haryana, where they would do sex screening in the machinery, and they would also provide abortions. I think this has now stopped, and because India has come down hard on this, but that's how strong this boy preference is. The sex ratio went up to 11 boys more than girls. Not as bad as China.
You mean 11%, not 11 boys, 11%.
No, this is a ratio, 11 boys per girl.
Okay.
11 boys or 111 boys for 100 girls.
Yeah,
so as compared to.
That's 11% more, 100 girls.
Okay, 11% more.
Yeah.
So in recent years, India has tried to control this with this. It's called Save the Girl Child campaign, and it's coming down. But really, the tragic conclusion is, but it's still high. It's 8, 10, 7. The tragic conclusion is that son preference is so strong that it can lead to female feticide. And, the Nobel laureate Amartya Sen estimated at one point that about 100 million females are missing from India and China.
Yeah.
So we want a smaller population. We want lower fertility growth and rates and all that. But this is something that strikes me as truly sad. I don't know how one deals with this strong male preference. You can see it, you can also hear about it. Well, I will just conclude by what Subodh suggested I do, tell you a little bit about my work I worked in the World Bank as an economist for 20 odd years. And I was a woman from a developing country. And I want to tell you a little bit about what I enjoyed and what was good and what was not so good. It was a most interesting place. The work was always interesting. And it meant travel to many countries. And in Africa, I mainly worked on Africa and East Asia. And that was an experience that those experiences I'll never forget. Some good, some strange. That was good. What was also good was a lot of good camaraderie, good fellowship. People were, of course, ambitious. They were all very ambitious. But on the whole, there was coordination and a desire to share experiences, advice, and all that. What was difficult was that I am a single parent. I was a single parent bringing up a child. And although the bank was very kind in many ways, it made things difficult. this may well be true in other places, in other situations, but it was tough to deal with the kind of heavy, demanding work in the bank and bringing up a child. But the whole experience has been just true, very, very remarkably. It stays in my mind quite often. Memories come back.
Well, I just want to add that Gurushri lost her husband when he was quite young, but they brought up a young guy who's a brilliant fellow. Okay, so yeah, her efforts as a young single parent have paid off. Gopi is very brilliant, hardworking, pleasant, and so on. Is what you want in a child. Okay. Now,
thank you. Thank you very much. I'll tell him that. You say, Mom, you never say that.
But moms always want more from their children.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So okay, Gurushri, thank you.
Okay, I just want to say I left the bank because after a while I wanted to do something else.
Right.
Yeah, I was fond of teaching, and I thought I would move there.
Yeah, so she took early retirement a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit earlier than normal. Yeah.
That's not so unusual because there is the urge to do something different.
Yeah.
And you are smart and you're hardworking and you're all that, and you say, look, can't I do something else? So you take your pension and you move on. Okay. And I know she was a good, she taught only MA and PhD students, and she did a great job there too, I've heard. So, okay. So thank you, Gurushri. It was great to have you. And that's it all for today. And I'll be back with you for another interview with somebody else next time. Till then, bye from me.
Bye-bye. It was, I don't know who will see this, but whoever it is, I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.